The rain fell in a soft, relentless drizzle at 6:30 a.m., cloaking the small town of Evanston, just north of Chicago, in a silvery haze. Mia Callahan pulled her hatchback into the empty lot of Lincoln Middle School, her thermos of chamomile tea steaming in the cup holder, her mind already sketching out the day's art lesson. Seventh graders' watercolor landscapes, a chance to coax creativity from chaos. She taught art, not just because she loved the smell of paint or the way light caught a canvas, but because it was a language for kids who didn't always have words. At 34, Mia had settled into a rhythm here. Early mornings, quiet evenings, a life that felt steady, if sometimes a little too still. She stepped out, tugging her hood up against the wet, her boots splashing in shallow puddles. The school loomed ahead, its brick facade softened by the weather, the flagpole out front drooping under the weight of a soggy banner. Mia fumbled with her keys, her bag heavy with sketch pads and grading, when something made her pause. Not a sound, not a movement, just a feeling, like the air held its breath. She turned, squinting across the street toward the corner by the flagpole, where the sidewalk met a low hedge. There, sitting as still as a statue, was a puppy. A French Bulldog, small and compact, his brindled coat slick with rain, his bat-like ears upright despite the damp. He couldn't have been more than a few months old, his round eyes fixed on the empty street like he was waiting for someone who hadn't shown. Around his neck, bright against his dark fur, was a child's blue mitten tied loosely like a makeshift collar. Mia's breath caught. He didn't move, didn't shiver, just sat with a quiet dignity that felt almost human. She glanced up and down the street, empty, no cars, no people, just the patter of rain and the faint hum of a distant streetlight. Her shoes squelched as she crossed toward him, her heart picking up speed. The puppy's gaze shifted to her, his eyes deep and soulful, the kind that seemed to see more than they should. Mia crouched a few feet away, careful not to startle him. "Hey, little guy," she said softly, her voice barely above the rain. "What are you doing out here all alone?" He tilted his head, his wrinkled face giving him a look of gentle curiosity. No wag, no whine, just a steady watchfulness. That's when Mia noticed a corner of paper peeking from the mitten, folded, tight and tucked against his fur. Her fingers, cold and unsteady, reached for it, half expecting him to flinch. He didn't. The note came free, damp but intact, the ink smudged but legible. In careful, uneven handwriting, child's handwriting, it read, "His name is Ollie. He's sweet. Please love him. I couldn't keep him." Mia's throat tightened. No name, no number, no explanation, just those 4 sentences, heavy with a story she couldn't yet see. She read it again, her eyes stinging, picturing small hands. Folding the paper, tying the mitten, walking away, Ollie leaned slightly toward her, his nose brushing her knee, and let out a tiny snort, the kind French bulldogs make when they're trying to say something without words. She reached out, her hand hovering, then gently touched his head. His fur was cold, matted, but he pressed into her palm, his eyes never leaving hers. "Who left you here, buddy?" she whispered, scanning the street again, half hoping to see a kid lingering in the shadows, maybe regretting their choice. Nothing. Just rain, pooling in the cracks of the sidewalk, and this small, trusting creature who didn't seem to know. He'd been abandoned. Mia's chest ached, a mix of anger and sorrow for whoever had written that note, and something else, something protective, pulling her toward him like gravity. She stood, her knees damp, and made a choice without thinking it through. "Come on, Ollie," she said, scooping him up. He was lighter than he looked, his body curling into her arms like he'd been waiting for exactly this. The mitten stayed around his neck, the note now tucked into her pocket. He let out another soft snort, his head resting against her jacket, and Mia felt a warmth spread through her despite the chill. She carried him toward the school, her boots leaving prints in the wet grass, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. Inside, the hallways were dim, the heat just kicking, on with a low hum. Mia pushed open her classroom door, the familiar smell of acrylics and pencil shavings greeting her. She set Ollie down on the rug by her desk, grabbing a spare sweater from a drawer, a soft grey one she kept for chilly mornings. She draped sat over him, tucking it around his small frame. He didn't protest, just settled into it, his eyes following her as she moved to the window, checking the street one more time. Still empty. Mia sank into her chair, Ollie at her feet, and pulled the note from her pocket again. Please love him. The words hit harder now, in the quiet of her room. She looked at Ollie, his ears twitching slightly, his breathing steady despite the damp. He wasn't just a stray, he was a gift, left with hope, left with trust. And somehow that made it heavier. She didn't know what came next, animal control, a shelter, a lost pet report, but she knew she couldn't let him go. Not yet. She reached down, scratching behind his ear. You're safe now, Ollie, she said, and he sighed, a tiny sound that felt like agreement. Outside, the rain kept falling, blurring the world beyond the glass, but in here it was just them. Two strangers who'd found each other in the grey of a February morning, already starting to rewrite each other's stories. Mia sat at her desk, the classroom still hushed in the early morning. The only sounds the faint drip of rain outside and the soft hum of the radiator waking up. Ollie lay curled in the grey sweater at her feet, his small body rising and falling with each breath, his bat-like ears twitching now and then as if catching whispers from the world. The note rested on her desk, its uneven handwriting staring. Back at her, his name is Ollie, he's sweet, please love him, I couldn't keep him. She'd read it a dozen times already, each pass carving the words deeper into her mind. Who wrote it? Why? The questions looped, unanswered, but Ollie's presence grounded her, his quiet trust a tether in the swirl of her thoughts. She sipped her tea, now lukewarm, and glanced at the clock, 7:15 a.m. Soon the halls would fill with the clamour of middle schoolers, their sneakers squeaking, their voices a chaotic symphony. Mia wasn't sure how to explain a puppy in her classroom, let alone one with a story she didn't fully know. She'd fostered a cat once, years ago, a scrappy tabby who'd hissed at shadows. But this felt different. Ollie wasn't just passing through. He looked at her like he'd already decided she was his person, and that look stirred something in her. A warmth she hadn't felt in a long time, not since her apartment had started feeling more like a space to exist than a home. She knelt beside him, checking the sweater. His fur was drying, the brindled pattern catching the dim light, his wrinkles giving his face a kind of gentle wisdom. "What do I do with you, huh?" she murmured. Ollie tilted his head, letting out a soft snort, the kind that sounded almost like a chuckle. Mia smiled, her first real smile of the morning, and scratched behind his ear. He leaned into it, eyes half closing, and for a moment the weight of the note, the rain, the questions all faded. Her phone buzzed, a reminder to prep for class. Mia stood, hesitating. She couldn't leave him here alone, not after finding him like that, sitting so still in the rain. She grabbed an old scarf from her coat rack, folded it into a makeshift bed under her desk, and coaxed Ollie onto it. He settled in immediately, paws tucked, watching her with those soulful eyes. "Stay put, okay?" she said, half expecting him to bolt. He didn't. He just sighed, a tiny puff of air, and rested his chin on the scarf. Mia busied herself setting out paintbrushes and watercolor paper, but her gaze kept drifting to Ollie. She pulled out her phone, searching local lost pet pages, Evanston, Chicago, nearby shelters. Nothing about a French Bulldog. She typed a quick post on a community board. Found small puppy near Lincoln Middle School. Contact me if he's yours. She hesitated before hitting send, a small part of her hoping no one would claim him. Not yet. The first bell rang, a muffled chime through the walls, and soon the hallway erupted with voices. Mia braced herself. Her seventh graders were a lively bunch, curious, loud, quick to spot anything out of place. She stood by the door, greeting them as they shuffled in, backpacks slung low, hoodies damp from the rain. "Morning, Miss Callahan," called Aisha, her braids swinging as she dropped her bag. "You got new paints today?" Same old, Mia said, forcing a casual tone. "Grab your sketchbooks." But her eyes flicked to Ollie, still tucked under the desk, his ears perked now, listening. The kids hadn't noticed him yet, too busy chattering about a viral video or last night's basketball game. Mia exhaled, wondering how long she could keep him a secret. It didn't last. Lucas, a quiet boy who always lingered at the edges of the room, paused by her desk to sharpen a pencil. He froze, eyes widening. "Miss Callahan," he whispered, pointing. "There's a dog." Heads turned, gasps rippled through the room. "A dog?" Aisha was out of her seat first, craning her neck. "Where?" "Everyone stay calm," Mia said, her teacher voice kicking in. She stepped to the desk, kneeling to reveal Ollie, who blinked up at the sudden attention. His tail gave a slow wag, cautious but friendly. The class erupted in a chorus of awes and, "He's so cute." Mia raised a hand. "He's just visiting. His name's Ollie. Be gentle, okay?" They crowded around, but respectfully, their usual chaos tempered by curiosity. Ollie didn't flinch. He sat up, sniffing the air, his wrinkles deepening as he studied each face. Aisha knelt close. "Can I pet him?" Mia nodded, and Aisha's hand moved slowly, stroking his head. Ollie leaned into it, snorting softly, and the room seemed to hold its breath. "Is he yours, Miss Callahan?" asked Javier, peering over Aisha's shoulder. Mia hesitated, the note flashing in her mind. "For now," she said, the words feeling truer than she expected. "I found him this morning. He's staying with me until we figure things out." Lucas, still hovering nearby, hadn't moved closer. He was a kid who rarely spoke, his sketchbook always clutched like a shield, his eyes catching details others missed. Mia noticed him watching Ollie, not with excitement but with something deeper like recognition. "He looks happy," Lucas said quietly, almost to himself. "Yeah," Mia said, her voice softening. "I think he is." Class began, but Ollie was the real lesson. The kids painted, stealing glances at him as he dozed under the desk, his snores a faint rumble. Mia caught herself smiling more than usual, her instructions lighter, her patience deeper. When Lucas stayed late to finish his landscape, a moody swirl of blues and greys, she saw him slip a tiny sketch of Ollie onto her desk before leaving. It was rough but precise, capturing the puppy's ears and soulful stare. After the bell, Mia sat alone, Ollie stirring as the room emptied. She picked up Lucas's sketch, her chest tightening. She hadn't planned for this. A dog, a mystery, a classroom star in one morning. She texted her neighbor, Sam, asking if he had dog food to spare. "Be there in 10, he replied. When Sam arrived, a bag of kibble under his arm, Ollie perked up, sniffing eagerly. Mia poured some into a Tupperware lid, and Ollie ate slowly, his hunger polite but clear. "You keeping him?" Sam asked, leaning against the doorframe. Mia watched Ollie lick the last crumbs. "I don't know," she said, but as Ollie looked up, his eyes locking with hers, she felt a tug, like a thread stitching itself into place. She didn't know. His story didn't know who'd left him or why, but she knew one thing. Ollie wasn't just a stray. He was hers, at least for now, and that was enough to keep her heart racing with possibility. The drizzle had stopped by the next morning, leaving Evanston under a blanket of mist that clung to the trees and softened the edges of Lincoln Middle. School. Mia arrived early again, Ollie tucked under her arm like a small warm package, his blue mitten still loosely tied around his neck. She'd swapped the damp sweater for a folded towel in her bag, where he'd slept most of the night. Curled so close to her bed, she could hear his soft snorts in the dark. Her apartment, usually a quiet shell of routine, coffee, grading, the hum of a podcast, felt different with him there. Fuller somehow, like the silence had learned to breathe. She set Ollie down in her classroom, arranging the scarf bed under her desk again. He settled in, his bat-like ears twitching as she unpacked her supplies, watercolor trays, brushes, a stack of half-graded sketches. The note from yesterday sat in her pocket, a weight she couldn't ignore. Please love him. She'd checked her phone before bed. Still no replies to her lost pet post, no calls from shelters she'd emailed. Part of her was relieved, though she wouldn't admit it. Ollie wasn't just a visitor anymore, he was weaving himself into her days, his presence as natural as the paint stains on her fingers. The school day hadn't started, but Mia already felt a shift. Yesterday's buzz about Ollie had spread, and she caught whispers in the staff room, teachers curious, the janitor joking about a new mascot. She wasn't sure how long she could keep him here, but the thought of a shelter, of Ollie in a cage waiting for someone else, twisted her stomach. She knelt beside him, scratching his wrinkled forehead. "Your trouble, you know that?" she said. Ollie snorted, his tail giving a slow wag, and Mia laughed, the sound startling her in the quiet room. The first bell rang, and the halls, filled with the usual chaos, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, voices overlapping. Mia braced for her seventh graders, wondering how Ollie would handle another day of attention. They poured in, eyes darting to her desk before they even sat down. "Is Ollie still here?" Aisha asked, dropping her backpack with a thud. "Yep," Mia said, stepping aside to reveal him. He poked his head out, blinking at the crowd, and the room erupted in grins. "Same rules, gentle, no crowding." They nodded, more restrained than yesterday, their excitement tempered by a kind of reverence. Ollie had that effect, Mia noticed. His calm seemed to settle everyone, even her rowdiest kids. Class began, but Ollie was the undercurrent. While Mia explained color theory, pointing to a chart of warm and cool tones, Ollie dozed, his snores a soft rhythm. Kids kept sneaking glances, and she didn't mind. During a quiet painting session, Lucas lingered near her desk again, his sketchbook, open to a new drawing of Ollie. This one with a tiny crown. "He looks like a king," Lucas said, so quiet Mia almost missed it. She smiled, crouching to his level. "He does, doesn't he?" Lucas didn't look up, but his pencil moved faster, bolder. He was her quietest student, always hovering at the edges, his thoughts locked behind dark eyes. Mia had tried for months to reach him. Projects, questions, gentle nudges, but he'd stayed closed off. Now with Ollie here, something was cracking open. When Lucas set his brush down, he reached out, hesitating, then petted Ollie's back. Ollie leaned into it, his head resting on Lucas's knee, and for a moment Lucas's face softened, unguarded. The bell rang, and the kids shuffled out, but Lucas stayed, pretending to organize his paints. "Can I draw him again tomorrow?" he asked. "Any time," Mia said, her chest tight. She watched him leave, his sketchbook clutched like a treasure, and felt a pang of gratitude for Ollie, who'd done in 2 days what she hadn't managed in months. By lunch, Ollie was a school celebrity. Miss Patel, the music teacher, stopped by, her scarf trailing as she knelt to meet him. "He's got a gift," she said, stroking his ears. "I had a kid in choir today. Nia, she's always fidgeting, never sings. She saw Ollie in the hall and hummed a whole verse after." Mia raised an eyebrow, and Miss Patel laughed. "I'm serious. He's magic." Mia didn't believe in magic, but she couldn't deny Ollie's pull. He trotted behind her to the staff room, his little legs keeping pace, his eyes scanning every face like he was memorizing them. Mr. Torres, the custodian, who usually grunted more than spoke, slipped Ollie a piece of his turkey sandwich. "Best co-worker I've had," he muttered, winking at Mia. She laughed, but her mind drifted to the note again. Whoever left Ollie hadn't just given up a pet, they'd trusted him to someone kind. She wanted to be worthy of that. Back in her classroom, Mia let Ollie explore while she graded. He sniffed the corners, pausing by a spilled dab of blue paint, then settled near her chair, his chin on her foot. She looked down, her pen stalling. Her apartment had been too quiet for too long, since her sister moved to Seattle, since her last relationship fizzled out. She'd filled the silence with work, with art, but it hadn't been enough. Ollie, with his soft snorts and steady gaze, was filling it now, and she wasn't sure she could let that go. She pulled out her laptop, searching therapy dogs on a whim. Pages popped up, training programs, certifications, stories of dogs, helping kids with anxiety, veterans with trauma. Ollie wasn't trained, but he had something raw, something real. The way he'd sat with Lucas, the way he'd charmed Mr. Torres without trying, it wasn't just cute. It was deeper, like he saw people, really saw them. Mia bookmarked a local program, her pulse quickening. It was a long shot, but what if? The afternoon passed in a blur. During her last class, a girl named Tara, usually loud and restless, asked to sit by Ollie while she painted. Mia nodded, and Tara plopped on the floor, whispering to him about her cat at home. Ollie listened, his head tilted, and Tara's usual fidgeting stilled. When she stood, her painting, a bright, messy sunset, was bolder than anything she'd done before. "He's like a good luck charm," Tara said, grinning. After school, Mia lingered, Ollie dozing under her desk. She texted Sam for more dog food, and when he arrived, he brought a small chew toy too. "Oh, you're in deep, aren't you?" he teased, watching Ollie gnaw the toy with relish. "Maybe," Mia admitted, smiling. She looked at Ollie, his tail wagging slowly, and felt a certainty settle in. He wasn't just a puppy she'd found. He was a spark igniting something in her students in this school. She didn't know who'd left him, but she was starting to believe it wasn't an accident. Ollie was here for a reason, and she was ready to find out what it was. The mist had lifted by Wednesday morning, and Evanston gleamed under a rare February sun, the sidewalk still damp but catching light like polished stone. Mia pulled into Lincoln Middle School's lot. Ollie nestled in the passenger seat on a folded blanket she'd grabbed from home. His bat-like ears perked as he watched the world through the window, his wrinkled face calm but alert, the blue mitten still tied loosely around his neck. She hadn't removed it, not yet. It felt like a piece of his story, a tether to whoever had left him by the flagpole. Every time she touched it, the note's words echoed. "His name is Ollie. He's sweet. Please love him. I couldn't keep him." Mia's apartment was starting to feel like theirs now. Ollie had claimed a corner of her living room, where he dragged the blanket each night, curling up with a contented snort. She'd bought a small bag of kibble, puppy formula the clerk had recommended, and a cheap collar, though she kept the mitten on for sentiment. At night, when she graded papers or sketched, Ollie sat close, his warmth a quiet anchor. She'd caught herself talking to him, not just about her day, but about deeper things. Her sister's absence, the way teaching sometimes felt like shouting into a void. He listened, his eyes steady, and somehow it helped. At school, Ollie was a phenomenon. Kids waved to him in the halls, teachers snuck him treats, and even Principal Nguyen, who rarely cracked a smile, had nodded approvingly when she saw him trotting behind Mia. But the note gnawed at her. Someone had loved Ollie enough to name him, to write those words, to leave him where he'd be found. Mia couldn't stop picturing a child, small hands shaking as they tied the mitten, walking away into the rain. She needed to know who, not just for Ollie but for herself, to understand the choice that had brought him to her. She settled Ollie under her desk, his scarf bed now a permanent fixture, and checked her phone again. No replies to her lost pet. Post, no emails from shelters. She'd almost given up hope of finding answers, but something kept her looking. During her planning period, she wandered to the library, Ollie at her heels, his nails clicking softly on the tile. Mr. Chen, the librarian, was shelving books, his glasses perched low. "Morning, Mia," he said, then grinned at Ollie. "And, morning, star pupil." Mia laughed, but her voice turned serious. "Hey, can I ask you something?" She pulled the mitten from her pocket, holding it up. "This was on Ollie when I found him. It's a kid's, right? Have you seen one like it around?" Mr. Chen adjusted his glasses, squinting. "Blue. Knitted." He paused, his brow furrowing. "You know, I think Sophie Morales had one like that. 6th grader, quiet, always reading in the corner. I noticed her gloves last fall. Same color, same fuzzy yarn." Mia's pulse quickened. "Sophie Morales," she repeated, the name unfamiliar but sharp, like a key turning. "Thanks, I'll check it out." She headed back to her classroom, Ollie trotting along, her mind racing. Sophie. Could she be the one? Mia didn't teach 6th grade, but she knew faces from assemblies, lunch duty. She tried to picture Sophie, small maybe, with a book always in hand. The image was fuzzy, but it was a start. All day, Mia watched for her. Between classes, she scanned the halls, Ollie drawing smiles and pats from kids rushing by. Lucas stopped to show her another sketch of Ollie, this one with a tiny cape, and Mia's heart lifted, but her thoughts stayed on Sophie. During lunch, she asked Ms. Patel, who taught 6th grade music. "Sophie Morales? Oh, she's a sweetheart," Ms. Patel said, stirring her coffee. "Keeps to herself, moved a few weeks ago. I think her family's in a new complex downtown." "Moved?" Mia's voice caught. "Like, recently?" Ms. Patel nodded. "Right before winter break, I think. Why?" Just curious, Mia said, but her mind was spinning. A move, a mitten, a puppy left behind. It was starting to fit. She glanced at Ollie, snoozing under her desk, and felt a pang. If Sophie was the one, what had it cost her to leave him? That afternoon, during a free period, Mia spotted her. A girl lingered outside her classroom, peering through the door's window, her dark ponytail swinging. She was small, maybe 11, with a worn backpack and sneakers scuffed at the toes. Mia opened the door, Ollie stirring at the sound. "Hey there," Mia said gently. "You looking for someone?" The girl froze, eyes darting to Ollie, then away. No, I just—" Her voice was soft, almost lost in the hallway's hum. Up close, Mia saw her face, round cheeks, a scattering of freckles, and eyes that held a quiet weight. "You're Sophie, right?" Mia asked, keeping her tone light. The girl nodded, clutching her backpack strap. Mia hesitated, then reached into her pocket, pulling out the mitten. "I found this on a puppy. His name's Ollie. Does it look familiar?" Sophie's breath hitched. Her eyes locked on the mitten, then flicked to Ollie, who'd padded to Mia's side, his tail wagging slowly. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Sophie's face crumpled, tears spilling before she could hide them. "It's mine," she whispered. I left him there." Mia's heart thudded. She knelt, putting a hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Hey, it's okay. Can you tell me what happened?" Ollie stepped closer, sniffing Sophie's shoe, and she sank to the floor, her hands trembling as she reached for him. He nuzzled her palm, letting out a soft snort, and Sophie's sobs broke free. "We had to move," she said, her voice raw. "The new place, it's small, and the landlord said no pets. My mom, she said we couldn't keep him. I didn't want to take him to a shelter. I thought if I left him here, someone kind would find him." She looked at Ollie, tears streaking her face. "I saw you with the kids sometimes, Miss Callahan. You seemed nice." Mia swallowed hard, her own eyes stinging. She pictured Sophie that rainy morning, tying the mitten, writing the note, walking away as Ollie sat by the flagpole. The courage it must have taken, the heartbreak. "You did something really brave," Mia said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Ollie's safe, he's loved. You made sure of that." Sophie wiped her face, stroking Ollie's back. He leaned into her, his eyes half closed, like he remembered every moment of their time together. "Is he okay?" she asked, almost a plea. "He's more than okay," Mia said, smiling. "He's a star here. Kids love him, teachers too. He's special." She paused, then added, "Would you like to visit him sometimes? I'd love to keep you updated." Sophie's face lit up, a mix of relief and joy. "Really? I can see him?" "Absolutely," Mia said. "He'd like that." Ollie wagged his tail as if agreeing, and Sophie laughed, a small bright sound that cut through the ache in Mia's chest. They sat there a while, Sophie whispering to Ollie, telling him about her new room, her new bus route. Mia watched, her heart swelling. Sophie had given Ollie up not out of carelessness but love, trusting the world to catch him. And it had. Through Mia, through this school, through moments like this. As Sophie stood to leave, she hugged Ollie. One more time, then looked at Mia. "Thank you," she said, her voice steadier now, "for finding him." "I should be thanking you," Mia said, meaning it. Sophie smiled, shy but real, and slipped out, her backpack bouncing. Mia looked at Ollie, who settled back under the desk, his mitten still bright against his fur. I just felt a new clarity, like a fog lifting. Ollie wasn't just hers, he was a gift, a bridge between hearts, and now she knew where he'd come from. It didn't close the story. It opened it wider, promising more connections, more healing, more hope. The sun was stronger by mid-March, warming Evanston's streets and coaxing buds onto the trees lining Lincoln Middle School. Mia felt the shift in her bones as she parked. Her car, Ollie perched on the passenger seat, his blue mitten now retired to a shelf at home, replaced by a proper collar, green with a tiny bell that jingled when he trotted. He'd grown a little, his French Bulldog frame still compact but sturdier, his wrinkles deeper, giving him a look of quiet wisdom. Mia smiled as he snorted, sniffing the air through the cracked window, his bat-like ears twitching at the sound of distant school buses. Her apartment was unmistakably his now, a chew toy by the couch, a water bowl by the kitchen, his blanket a permanent fixture beside her bed. She hadn't planned to keep him, not at first, but Ollie had decided otherwise, and she wasn't arguing. Since finding Sophie, Mia's perspective had sharpened. Knowing Ollie's story, his life with a girl who loved him enough to let him, made his presence feel like a responsibility, not just a gift. Sophie visited once a week, slipping into Mia's classroom after school to sit with Ollie, her face lighting up as he wiggled into her lap. Those moments, full of quiet joy, pushed Mia to wonder what else Ollie could do. He wasn't just a classroom mascot or her companion. He had a knack for reaching people, for softening edges no one else could touch. Lucas's sketches, Tara's steadier hands, even Mr. Torres's rare smiles, all traces of Ollie's magic. So, one night, scrolling therapy dog websites, Mia had filled out an application for a local training program. It was a leap, but her gut told her Ollie was ready. Now, as she carried him into school, his bell jingling, Mia felt a nervous thrill. The program's first session was this weekend. Basic obedience, temperament tests, exposure to crowds. She wasn't sure if Ollie, with his stubborn snorts and love of naps, could handle it, but his calm at school gave her hope. She set him, on his scarf bed under her desk, his eyes following her as she arranged paint cans for the day's lesson. Self-portraits, a chance for her 7th graders to dig deeper than their mirrors. "You're going to be a pro, right?" she whispered to Ollie. He tilted his head, letting out a soft huff, and Mia laughed, her nerves easing. The school day hummed with its usual rhythm, but Ollie was the heartbeat. Kids greeted him like an old friend, their voices softer when he was near. During first period, Aisha painted her portrait with bold reds, glancing at Ollie for approval. "He's like my art critic," she joked, and Mia grinned, noticing how Aisha's usual rush slowed, her brushstrokes more deliberate. But it was Lucas who surprised her most. He'd started talking more, not just to Ollie but to her, sharing bits of his day, a book he'd read, a joke he'd heard. Today he lingered by her desk, his latest sketch a detailed Ollie with a tiny heart over his head. "Can he stay during lunch?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sure," Mia said, her chest tightening. Lucas sat on the floor, Ollie's head in his lap, and read aloud from a sci-fi novel, his words halting but clear. Mia pretended to grade, giving them space, but she watched from the corner of her eye. Lucas, who'd once flinched at attention, was opening up, and Ollie was the key. Word of Ollie's charm had spread beyond her classroom. Ms. Patel reported that Nia, her fidgety choir girl, now sang full verses, claiming Ollie's hallway visits fixed her nerves. Mr. Chen let Ollie nap in the library during free periods, where kids read to him, their voices steadier with his snores as backdrop. Even Principal Nguyen, stopping by to check on a budget form, paused to pet Ollie, muttering, "He's good," for morale. Mia saw it too. Ollie didn't just comfort. He connected people, threading them together like colors in a painting. That afternoon, Mia took a chance. The therapy dog program had suggested early exposure to new settings, so she emailed the director of a local children's clinic, a small facility downtown for kids with chronic illnesses or emotional challenges. Could she bring Ollie for a trial visit? The reply came fast. "We'd love to meet him." Mia's stomach fluttered as she read it aloud to Ollie, who yawned, unimpressed. "You better bring your A-game," she teased, scratching his ears. Saturday. Morning, Mia drove to the clinic, Ollie in his new collar, a red vest from the program marking him as a trainee. The building was bright but hushed, with murals of stars on the walls and the faint smell of antiseptic. A nurse, Carla, greeted them, her smile warm but cautious. "We've got a girl, Emma, who might like him," she said. "She's 9, struggles with anxiety, doesn't talk much lately." Mia nodded, her heart racing. She led Ollie to a small room where Emma sat by a window, her knees drawn up, her eyes fixed on nothing. She was thin, her hoodie swallowing her frame, her fingers twisting a bracelet. Mia hesitated, then whispered to Ollie, "Go slow, okay?" She unclipped his leash and he padded forward, stopping a few feet from Emma's chair. He sat, his head tilted, waiting. Emma didn't move at first, her gaze flickering to Ollie, then away. Mia held her breath, ready to step in, but Ollie stayed. Still, his eyes soft, his bell silent. Minutes passed, the room quiet except for Emma's shallow breaths. Then slowly, her hand dropped to her side, fingers brushing the air. Ollie inched closer, just enough to let her touch his ear. Her fingers lingered, tracing his wrinkles, and a tiny smile broke through, so faint Mia almost missed it. "Hi," Emma whispered, her voice barely there. Ollie snorted, resting his chin on her foot, and Emma's shoulders relaxed, her bracelet still for the first time. Carla, watching from the door, mouthed, "Wow." Mia blinked back tears, her chest full. She'd hoped Ollie could do this, but seeing him reach a girl who'd shut out the world, was something else entirely. They stayed an hour, Ollie moving between kids in the common room. A boy with a cast tossed him a soft ball, laughing when Ollie chased it with a waddle. A teen girl, silent at first, ended up telling Ollie about her dog at home, her voice cracking but steady. Each time Ollie listened, his presence a balm, his snorts a kind of punctuation. When they left, Carla hugged Mia. "Bring him back," she said. "He's a game changer." Driving home, Mia glanced at Ollie, asleep in his blanket, his vest crooked. "You're a natural," she said, her voice thick. At school on Monday, she shared the story with Lucas, who grinned, adding a red vest to his next Ollie sketch. Sophie stopped by, her eyes wide when Mia told her about the clinic. "He's helping people," Sophie said, petting him, "like he helped me." Mia nodded, her throat tight. Ollie wasn't just a puppy anymore. He was a purpose, hers and theirs, stitching wounds she hadn't known were there. And as he curled up that night, his bell jingling softly, Mia knew they were only beginning. Spring crept into Evanston by April, tentative at first, then bold. Tulips pushing through the soil, sunlight spilling across the sidewalks, the air sweet with new grass. Mia felt it in her steps as she walked to Lincoln Middle School, Ollie, trotting beside her, his green collar bell jingling like a tiny anthem. His red therapy vest, now a familiar sight, hugged his compact frame, his French Bulldog wrinkles catching the morning light. He'd passed his certification last week, a badge clipped to his vest reading Ollie Therapy Dog. Mia had held that badge like a treasure, her eyes misty as she'd whispered, "You did it, buddy." Ollie had snorted, unimpressed, but his tail wagged like he knew. Her apartment was a home now, not just a space. Ollie's toys littered the floor, a squeaky bone, a chewed rope, his water bowl a fixture by the fridge. At night, he slept on her bed, his warmth a steady comfort against her side. Mia hadn't realized how quiet her life had been until Ollie filled it, his snorts and sighs a language she'd learned to love. Sophie's visits were routine, her shy smiles brighter each time she hugged Ollie, her drawings of him, caped, crowned, vested, pinned to Mia's fridge. Lucas's sketches, too, had multiplied, a gallery of Ollie's adventures taped to her classroom walls. The school, the clinic, her heart. Ollie had woven himself into all of it, a thread of hope she hadn't known she needed. This morning, Mia carried a small box to school, a gift from the clinic staff. A knitted collar for Ollie, blue like the mitten, embroidered with tiny stars. She'd save it for later, a surprise for their next visit. As they entered her classroom, Ollie beelined for his scarf bed, circling before flopping down, his bell jingling. Mia laughed, setting up for her 7th graders, collage day bits of fabric and paper to tell their stories. She glanced at Ollie, his eyes half closed, and felt a swell of gratitude. He wasn't just hers anymore. He belonged to everyone he'd touched, a small dog with a heart too big for his chest. The school day buzzed with Ollie's usual magic. Saisha glued sequins to her collage, chatting to Ollie about her dance recital. His head tilted like he understood. Tara, once restless, worked quietly, her collage a burst of colour, Ollie's paw print stamped in paint at the corner. Lucas lingered, longest, his collage an intricate mix of cutouts, stars, books, a tiny dog in the centre. "It's us," he said softly, pointing to the dog. Mia's throat tightened. "It's perfect," she said, and Lucas grinned, petting Ollie before slipping out. At lunch, Ms. Patel stopped by, her scarf trailing. "The choir's doing a spring concert," she said. "Nia wants Ollie there, says he's her lucky charm." Mia smiled, picturing Ollie snoozing through scales. Even Mr. Torres, sweeping the hall, tossed Ollie a biscuit, muttering, "Don't tell the boss." The school had embraced him, not as a novelty but a necessity, his presence softening edges, opening doors. That afternoon, Mia and Ollie headed to the children's clinic, the knitted collar in her bag. The murals greeted them, stars glowing under fluorescent lights. Carla met them at the door, her eyes bright. "Emma's been asking for him," she said. Emma, the anxious girl who'd first smiled at Ollie's touch, was stronger now, her cheeks fuller, her bracelet less a fidget and more a keepsake. She sat in the common room colouring and lit up when Ollie waddled in. "Ollie," Emma called, patting the floor. He trotted over, his vest crooked, and settled beside her, his chin on her knee. Emma stroked his ears, whispering about a poem she'd written. Mia watched, her heart full as Emma's pencil moved, her words flowing easier with Ollie near. Other kids joined, a boy with crutches, a girl with a shaved head, each drawn to Ollie's quiet. He didn't demand. He offered, his snorts a gentle nudge to keep going. Before they left, Carla handed Mia the box. "For Ollie," she said. Mia opened it, revealing the starry collar. Emma clapped, insisting on putting it on. Ollie sat patiently, his tail wagging. As Emma fastened it, the blue yarn bright against his fur. "It's like he's a constellation," Emma said, and Mia laughed, blinking back tears. Outside, she snapped a photo. Ollie in his new collar, Emma's arm around him, and sent it to Sophie, who texted back a heart emoji. Back home, Mia sat on her porch, Ollie at her feet, the sunset painting the sky in pinks and golds. She pulled the mitten from her shelf, its yarn frayed but soft, and held it, remembering that rainy morning by the flagpole. She'd driven past it yesterday, slowing to glance at the sidewalk, the hedge, the spot where Ollie had waited. No ghost of that. Day lingered. Only a quiet warmth, like the world had said yes to his hope. Sophie's words echoed. I wanted someone kind to find him, and Mia felt their truth. Ollie had found her, yes, but he'd also found Lucas, Emma, Tara, Naya, even gruff Mr. Torres. He'd turned Mia's solitude into connection, her classroom, into a haven, the clinic into a place of laughter. She thought of Lucas reading aloud, Emma's poem, Sophie's drawings pinned like promises. Ollie hadn't just healed them. He'd shown Mia her own strength, her capacity to carry hope for others. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sophie. "Can I see him tomorrow?" Mia typed back, "Always." She looked at Ollie, his head resting on her foot, the starry collar catching the last light. "We're a team, aren't we?" she said, her voice soft. Ollie snorted, his tail thumping, and Mia laughed, the sound blending with the evening's hum. She stood, Ollie following her inside, his bell jingling. The mitten went back on its shelf, beside Lucas's sketches. Emma's thank you note from the clinic, a photo of Sophie hugging Ollie. Mia paused, her eyes tracing them. This was their story now. Not just a puppy left in the rain, but a life, built from trust, from small hands letting go and others reaching out. Ollie had started it, and Mia would carry it forward with every visit, every smile, every heart he touched. As she turned off the light, Ollie curled up on his blanket, his snores filling the dark. Mia lay down, her hand brushing his fur, and felt the silence shift, not empty but alive, woven with purpose. Outside, Evanston slept under a spring sky, and somewhere, a child like Sophie dreamed of a dog who'd found his place, proving the world could still be kind.